Megan Carter had worked at Ellison Tech for 5 long years. Every morning, she arrived early, made her coffee, and sat at her desk with quiet focus. She was known for her dedication and calm nature. Her coworkers often came to her for help, and she never said no. She didn't care much for attention or praise, but deep down, she hoped her hard work would one day be noticed. It never was. Her boss, Richard Cole, was the kind of man who smiled in meetings but took credit for everything his team did. He liked being seen as the genius behind every idea. Megan's calm presence often made him feel small, and instead of appreciating her, he used her work to lift himself higher. She knew it, but she stayed quiet. She believed patience and honesty would win in the end. It was a Monday morning when the final straw came. The company's biggest project was being presented to the board of directors. Megan had spent months working on it, days of skipped lunches, late nights, and endless corrections. She knew every detail of that proposal like the back of her hand. It was her pride. Her name, however, was nowhere on it. As she sat in the conference room, watching Richard begin his speech, she felt a knot in her stomach. He spoke confidently, showing her slides, her research, her design. Her teammates exchanged uneasy glances. They all knew it was Megan's work. Richard, however, stood in front of everyone and said, "I came up with this strategy after many sleepless nights." The room clapped. Megan sat frozen. Her heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to stand up, to say something, but she couldn't move. Her hands trembled under the table. For a moment, she felt invisible, like all those years meant nothing. Richard glanced at her with a small, satisfied smile. It was the look of someone who believed he had won. After the meeting ended, the team gathered around Richard, congratulating him. Megan quietly left the room. She walked to the restroom, locked herself inside, and let the tears fall. She wasn't crying just because of what he did today, she was crying for all the times she had stayed silent. For every time she had chosen to be kind instead of speaking up. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and whispered, "No more." That night, she sat alone in her small apartment. The city lights outside her window flickered, but she didn't notice them. Her laptop was open, and her resignation letter sat half-finished on the screen. She stared at it for hours, unsure of what to write. Leaving meant giving up everything she had built. But staying meant giving up herself. She remembered the day she first joined Ellison Tech. She was young, full of dreams. She believed that hard work always got rewarded. She remembered the first time Richard praised her in a meeting, how proud she had felt. But now, that memory only made her feel foolish. Somewhere along the way, she had become the shadow behind his success. Her phone buzzed. A message from her friend in the office read, "I'm so sorry, Megan. Everyone knows it was your work." She smiled sadly. Knowing didn't change anything. No one would stand up for her. She had to stand up for herself. She thought about confronting Richard, about yelling at him in front of everyone. But that wasn't her way. She didn't want revenge through anger. She wanted peace. She wanted freedom. Slowly, she began typing again. Each word felt heavy, but honest. "Dear Mr. Cole, I am writing to inform you of my decision to resign from my position at Ellison Tech, effective immediately. I have learned a lot here, and I am grateful for the experiences. However, it has become clear that my values and goals no longer align with the company's direction." She stopped typing and took a deep breath. Her chest felt lighter. For the first time in a long while, she felt in control. She saved the document and printed it. The sound of the printer filled the silence of her apartment. As she held the paper in her hands, she realized it wasn't just a letter, it was her first act of courage. She placed the letter neatly on her desk, next to her laptop. Tomorrow, she would walk into that office one last time. She would smile, hand over the letter, and leave quietly. No drama. No tears. Just calm strength. Before going to bed, she stepped out onto her balcony. The night air was cool, and she could see the lights of the city stretching far into the distance. Somewhere out there, she believed, was a place where her work would be valued. Where her ideas would carry her name. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow, I start over." Inside, the printed letter lay waiting, a single piece of paper that would change everything. It was not a goodbye, born out of defeat. It was a beginning born out of courage. And though she didn't know it yet, walking away from Ellison Tech would become the most powerful decision of her life. The next morning, Megan Carter woke up early. She didn't sleep much, but she felt strangely calm. The city outside was still half asleep, the sky turning pale blue. She dressed simply, made her coffee, and stared at the printed resignation letter on her kitchen table. It looked small, but to her, it meant freedom. She folded it neatly, slipped it into her bag, and whispered to herself, "Just one more day." When she arrived at Ellison Tech, the office was buzzing with excitement. Today was the big day, the presentation to finalize a $26 million deal with Vantage Systems. Everyone was nervous, except Richard Cole. He stood in the middle of the floor, confident and proud, joking with the executives. Megan walked past him quietly. He barely noticed her. At her desk, she saw the final presentation file open on her computer. She had created that file, line by line, slide by slide. Every number, every design, every plan was hers. Yet when she opened the file, she saw something that made her chest tighten. Her name had been removed again. Under Project Director, it read only one name, Richard Cole. For a long moment, Megan stared at the screen. The noise of the office faded around her. It was as if everything inside her went still. She had given her heart to this project. The late nights, the missed weekends, the countless revisions, all erased in one click. "Hey, Megan," said Lisa, one of her coworkers, coming over with a worried look. "Did you see? He removed your name again." Megan nodded silently. "It's fine," she said softly, though her voice trembled. Lisa shook her head. "You don't deserve this. You built the whole thing." Megan smiled weakly. "Maybe this is my last day here." Lisa looked surprised. "You're quitting?" "Maybe," Megan said. "Sometimes walking away is stronger than fighting." A few hours later, the entire team gathered in the conference hall. The room smelled of fresh coffee and expensive perfume. The senior managers from Vantage Systems had arrived, and everyone was on edge. Megan stood at the back of the room, unseen as usual, while Richard took the stage. His smile was wide, his voice loud. He spoke confidently about the vision, the growth, the numbers, all the things Megan had spent months perfecting. She watched him from the corner, calm but distant. Every time he mentioned his brilliant idea, the silence inside her grew heavier. When the presentation ended, the room erupted in applause. The executives shook hands, the clients smiled, and Richard looked proud. Megan quietly stepped out of the room. No one noticed her leave. She walked to her desk, opened her bag, and took out her resignation letter. For a few minutes, she just held it, running her fingers over the paper. It wasn't just a letter anymore. It was her voice, the one she had buried for years. With slow, steady steps, she walked toward Richard's office. He was standing near his window, laughing with another manager. When he saw her, his smile faded a little. "Megan," he said. "Can't it wait? We're kind of busy celebrating right now." She nodded. "I just wanted to give you this," she said, placing the envelope on his desk. He picked it up, frowned, and opened it. As his eyes scanned the letter, his expression changed. "You're resigning?" he asked, half laughing. "Megan, this isn't the time for drama. We just landed a huge deal." She looked at him calmly. "You landed it," she said softly. "Congratulations." He leaned back in his chair, arrogance returning. "You'll regret this. People don't just walk away from Ellison Tech." She smiled faintly. "Maybe not. But I'm not people. I'm me." She turned to leave, but he called after her. "You're nothing without this company, Megan. You'll see that soon enough." She paused for a moment, then looked back. "Maybe," she said quietly. "But at least now, I'll be nothing on my own terms." And with that, she walked out. No tears. No hesitation. Just calm determination. As she stepped into the elevator, she felt the weight lifting off her shoulders. The doors closed slowly, and for the first time in years, she smiled a real, peaceful smile. Down below, the city awaited, full of noise and life. Somewhere out there, her new beginning waited too. Back in the conference room, Richard continued to celebrate. He didn't realize that the woman who had built his empire had just walked out. Nor did he know that the deal he was so proud of would soon begin to fall apart without her guiding hand. For Megan, this was not the end. It was the moment before everything changed. Megan Carter walked into Ellison Tech for the last time. The morning light streamed through the tall glass windows, painting the office in soft gold. Everything looked the same, people talking, keyboards clicking, coffee cups steaming, but to her, it all felt distant. She was no longer a part of this place. She went straight to her desk and opened her computer one last time. She didn't check her emails. She didn't look at the project files. She just stared at the screen for a few seconds, then shut it down. Slowly, she gathered her few things, a small plant, a framed photo of her parents, and a notebook filled with her ideas. That notebook was the only thing that truly belonged to her. Her coworker Lisa came by quietly. "You're really leaving," she said, her voice soft. Megan nodded with a small smile. "It's time," she replied. Lisa hugged her. "I wish I had your courage." Megan smiled again. "You will, someday. Don't let them silence you." As she walked toward Richard Cole's office, the sound of her heels echoed down the hallway. Every step felt like a small victory. She found him inside, standing behind his desk, talking loudly on the phone. When he noticed her, he held up a finger to make her wait. She didn't mind. For the first time, she wasn't in a hurry. When he hung up, he smirked. "Back again? Changed your mind already?" She shook her head. "No. I came to say goodbye." He leaned back in his chair. "You'll regret this. You'll see that the corporate world isn't kind to quitters." Megan looked at him calmly. "I'm not quitting. I'm moving on." He frowned, confused by her calmness. "Do you have any idea what you're walking away from?" "Yes," she said simply. "And that's why I'm leaving." Richard laughed. "You think you can make it out there on your own? Without this company?" Megan smiled slightly. "I already did the work of this company on my own. You just put your name on it." His face tightened, but she didn't stay to see his reaction. She turned and walked away, leaving his words hanging in the air. As she reached the main doors, she looked around the office one last time. The same people who had once looked past her now watched in silence. Some nodded at her quietly, as if to say they understood. Others looked down, afraid to meet her eyes. Megan didn't blame them. She knew how it felt to stay silent. She stepped outside, and the sunlight hit her face. The air smelled different, fresh, open, real. She took a deep breath, feeling lighter than she had in years. The sound of the door closing behind her was final. She didn't look back. Walking down the street, she felt free but uncertain. She didn't know what she would do next, but she knew she couldn't go back. Her phone buzzed. It was an email from a recruiter who had contacted her weeks ago. She smiled. Maybe it was a sign. That evening, she sat in a quiet cafe with her notebook open in front of her. She flipped through the pages filled with her ideas, plans she had once dreamed of presenting to Ellison Tech but never could. Now, those ideas were hers again. She could take them wherever she wanted. As she sipped her coffee, she noticed a man at the next table watching her curiously. He was in his late 30s, wearing a simple suit, with kind eyes. "Excuse me," he said, smiling. You're Megan Carter, right? From Ellison Tech? She hesitated, surprised. Yes, she said slowly. He extended his hand. Nathan Brooks, from Vantage Systems. We met briefly during a meeting last year. I heard you left Ellison. Megan nodded. I did. Today, actually. Nathan looked impressed. Good for you. You were the real brain behind that project, weren't you? She gave a modest smile. I did my part. He leaned forward slightly. I always wanted to ask you something. Would you be open to consulting with us directly? I think we could use someone like you. Megan blinked, unsure if she heard right. Consulting? Yes, he said. Your ideas were solid, better than what we're seeing from Ellison now. Maybe we could talk over lunch tomorrow? Megan felt a warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just about the opportunity. It was about being seen, finally, for who she truly was. She smiled, nodding. I'd like that. As she walked home that night, the city lights seemed brighter than before. The fear of the unknown had faded, replaced by quiet confidence. For the first time, her future felt like it belonged entirely to her. And somewhere high above in Ellison Tech's glass tower, Richard Cole was celebrating a deal that would soon start to crumble. But Megan didn't think about him anymore. She was done with revenge. She was focused on something better, her own beginning. Megan Carter sat in a quiet corner of the cafe the next morning, a notebook open beside her cup of tea. She was still getting used to the feeling of freedom. For the first time in years, she didn't have to rush to work or answer endless emails. The air outside was fresh, the sunlight soft, and everything felt different, peaceful, yet uncertain. She had promised herself she wouldn't think about Ellison Tech, but her mind still wandered there. She wondered how the team was doing without her. She wondered if Richard Cole had even noticed she was gone. Then she smiled to herself. Of course he had noticed, but not in the way he thought. He would see the cracks soon enough. As she flipped through her notes, someone approached her table. Megan Carter? She looked up and saw a familiar face. It was Nathan Brooks from Vantage Systems, the company Ellison Tech had just made a deal with. He looked friendly, curious. Yes, she said politely. We met briefly at one of the meetings, didn't we? He smiled. That's right. You probably don't remember me, but I remember you. You were the one who handled all the technical details, right? Megan nodded, unsure where this was going. I did some of the groundwork, yes. Nathan laughed softly. Some? I'd say most. I noticed your name missing from the final report. That surprised me. Her heart skipped a beat. Few people ever noticed her work, much less mentioned it out loud. That's how things were at Ellison Tech, she said simply. Nathan looked at her for a moment, then leaned forward. Can I be honest? Something about the numbers in that final proposal didn't sit right with me. The profit margins seemed too clean, almost polished. Were you the one who handled the calculations? Megan hesitated. Yes, I was. But I left before the final version was submitted. He frowned slightly. That explains it. After you left, there were adjustments made, numbers that didn't match your earlier drafts. I asked Richard about it, but he brushed me off. Megan felt a quiet anger rising. She had known Richard was capable of bending the truth, but not this. They changed my reports, she asked. Nathan nodded. That's what it looks like. I've been reviewing everything again, and honestly, some of it doesn't make sense. He studied her carefully. You seem like someone who knows what she's doing. Would you be willing to take a look? Just to tell me if my doubts are valid. Megan paused, unsure what to say. Part of her wanted to walk away, to stay out of anything related to Ellison Tech. But another part, the part that had been silenced for years, wanted to speak the truth. She took a deep breath. All right, she said. I'll look. Nathan smiled. Great. How about tomorrow morning? We can meet here again. I'll bring the documents. Tomorrow works, she said quietly. After he left, Megan sat for a while, thinking. Her hands trembled slightly as she closed her notebook. She had wanted peace, not confrontation. But maybe this was something she needed to face, one last time. That night, she couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about how easily her work had been stolen, twisted, and used for someone else's gain. She remembered all the times she had stayed late, fixing problems no one else could solve. And now, someone had not only erased her name but had changed her data to make a dishonest profit. In the quiet of her apartment, she whispered to herself, "They used my honesty against me. But not anymore." The next morning, she returned to the cafe early. Nathan arrived soon after, carrying a folder. They sat together, and he spread the papers out across the table. Megan looked over the numbers, graphs, and summaries carefully. Her eyes moved quickly, her mind sharp and focused. Within minutes, she spotted what was wrong. They inflated the numbers, she said finally. They made it look like the profit margin was 25%, but it's actually 11%. The data was changed after I left. Nathan's eyes widened. That's serious. Megan nodded. It's not just serious, it's dishonest. If you sign this deal, Vantage Systems will lose money. Nathan leaned back, running a hand through his hair. I knew something was off. Thank you for confirming it. You might have just saved us from a huge mistake. Megan felt a strange mix of relief and satisfaction. For once, her knowledge had been used for something right. Nathan smiled at her. You really know your stuff, Megan. Would you consider consulting for us? We could use someone with your integrity. She hesitated, then smiled softly. I'd like that. As they shook hands, Megan realized something. She hadn't planned revenge. She hadn't gone looking for justice. It had found her, simply because she had done the right thing. And though she didn't know it yet, this chance meeting with Nathan Brooks was about to change everything, her career, her future, and the fate of the company she left behind. The morning sun shone softly through the cafe windows as Megan Carter sat across from Nathan Brooks. Between them lay a folder filled with documents that could decide the fate of a $26 million deal. Megan took a deep breath before opening it again. She wasn't working for Ellison Tech anymore, yet somehow she felt responsible for what had happened. Her hands were steady, but her heart beat faster with every page she turned. Nathan watched her closely. You sure you're okay, doing this? He asked quietly. Megan nodded. I need to do it. I spent months on this project. I deserve to know what they did to it. For the next hour, she went through every chart, every report, every summary. The numbers looked neat, professional, even impressive, but something about them was too perfect. She compared them with the older drafts saved on her laptop. Slowly, the truth began to reveal itself. They changed everything, she said finally, her voice calm but sharp. They adjusted the cost analysis, inflated the sales projections, and erased risk factors completely. It looks great on paper, but it's fake. If you sign this, your company will lose millions. Nathan frowned deeply. You're sure? Megan turned the paper around and pointed. Here, see this? I calculated this part myself. The real number should be 11.3%. They made it 24.9%. That's impossible. It's manipulation. He leaned back, stunned. That means Richard Cole knowingly presented false data. Megan looked at him. Yes. And he used my work to make it believable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The cafe was quiet except for the sound of coffee being poured behind the counter. Megan felt a mix of anger and relief. Anger because her integrity had been used against her. Relief because now, the truth had a voice. Nathan finally spoke. Megan, this changes everything. We can't move forward with this deal. I'll have to call a meeting with my team immediately. She nodded. That's the right thing to do. He studied her expression. You know, you could have stayed silent. Most people would. Why help us after the way they treated you? Megan smiled faintly. Because it's not about revenge. It's about honesty. I won't let my work be used to hurt people. Nathan nodded, impressed. You have integrity. That's rare. He paused, then added, would you be open to joining Vantage Systems permanently? We need someone like you. Someone who tells the truth, even when it's hard. Megan looked down, surprised. Join you? Yes, Nathan said. As a consultant at first, but maybe full-time later. You've proven your worth already. She thought for a moment. After leaving Ellison Tech, she hadn't planned on jumping into another corporate job so soon. But this felt different. Honest. Real. She smiled softly. I'd like that. Later that day, Nathan called a meeting at Vantage Systems headquarters. Megan was invited to sit in quietly, though she didn't speak much. When the executives discussed the Ellison Tech proposal, Nathan laid out everything she had uncovered. There were gasps around the table. The financial director leaned forward and said, if we had signed that deal, it could have cost us a fortune. Nathan nodded. Exactly. Thanks to Ms. Carter here, we caught it in time. All eyes turned toward her. Megan felt her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to being acknowledged like this. I just told the truth, she said quietly. After the meeting, Nathan walked her to the lobby. You did something brave today, he said. Not many people would risk getting involved again. Megan smiled slightly. I've spent too many years being quiet. Maybe it's time I start speaking up. That evening, as she walked home through the soft glow of streetlights, she felt a calm she hadn't felt in years. For so long, she had believed that being humble meant staying silent. But now she understood, true humility was doing what was right, even when no one else did. Across town, at Ellison Tech, Richard Cole received a call from Vantage Systems. His smile faded as he listened. The $26 million deal was off. He slammed his phone down, furious. He couldn't understand what went wrong. But Megan did. She knew exactly how lies eventually collapse under their own weight. As she reached her apartment, she looked out at the night sky. Her path was uncertain, but she no longer feared the unknown. Somewhere deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The truth had finally unfolded, and with it, a new chapter in her life was just starting. The news hit Ellison Tech like a storm. One moment, the office was filled with celebration over the $26 million deal, and the next, chaos broke out. Richard Cole stood in the middle of the conference room, phone pressed to his ear, face turning red. What do you mean the deal is cancelled? He shouted. We finalized everything last week. But there was no saving it. Vantage Systems had officially withdrawn their offer. The reason? Inaccurate financial reporting. The phrase echoed through the company like a curse. Everyone in the office knew who had handled the original data, Megan Carter. Richard slammed his phone down, his voice echoing. Who leaked the old drafts? Who told them about the numbers? No one spoke. His team exchanged nervous looks, avoiding his gaze. For years, they had watched him take credit for other people's work. Now, they were watching his empire crumble. Meanwhile, Megan sat quietly in her apartment, sipping tea as the evening news played in the background. She didn't smile, but there was peace in her eyes. The anchor's voice mentioned the cancellation of the Ellison Tech deal, describing it as a major corporate setback. Megan switched off the TV and looked out the window. It wasn't joy she felt, it was closure. Back at the office, Richard's anger turned into panic. Emails flooded in from investors demanding explanations. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. By the end of the day, he was summoned to the top floor. The meeting was short and brutal. The board chair spoke coldly, Richard, the falsified data under your supervision has cost us millions in future trust. We cannot overlook this. He tried to defend himself. It wasn't me, it was her. Megan Carter. She must have told them. The chairman looked unimpressed. Megan Carter resigned before the final submission. The responsibility was yours. Richard's words faltered. He knew there was no way out. By evening, his termination email was circulating quietly through the company. The man who once humiliated others now found himself humiliated. Lisa, Megan's old coworker, watched everything unfold. She sent a short message to Megan, "You won't believe what's happening here." Justice came quietly. Megan replied only with, "Sometimes it does." At Vantage Systems, things were different. Nathan Brooks gathered his team for a brief meeting. "Ellison Tech's deal is off," he announced. "But I want everyone to know we avoided a disaster, thanks to Megan Carter." The room filled with appreciative murmurs. For once, Megan's name was being spoken with respect. Later, Nathan called her. "You were right about everything," he said. "Ellison Tech has been blacklisted by several partners. It's all over the industry news." Megan took a quiet breath. "I didn't want them ruined," she said softly. "I just wanted the truth to come out." Nathan smiled on the other end. "And it did. You did that. You turned honesty into strength." After the call, Megan sat down at her desk. She opened her old notebook, flipping through pages of ideas she had written long ago. For the first time, she didn't feel small or overlooked. Every idea, every note, every calculation, it all meant something again. A few days later, she received an email from Vantage Systems offering her a full-time position as a project consultant. The message ended with, "We believe in your vision." Megan read it twice, tears filling her eyes, not of sadness, but of pride. She accepted the offer. Meanwhile, at Ellison Tech, employees whispered about the downfall of their former boss. The company's reputation was in ruins. The same people who once ignored Megan now spoke her name with a mixture of guilt and admiration. They knew she had been the backbone of every success they once celebrated. Richard Cole cleaned out his office late one night. The halls were empty, the lights dim. As he packed his things, he noticed a small post-it note stuck to the back of a drawer. It was Megan's handwriting. It read, "Integrity isn't weakness, it's the foundation." He crumpled it in his hand, but the words stayed with him. For the first time, he understood what they meant. Across town, Megan walked home under the quiet glow of the streetlights. The air felt cool, calm, and full of promise. She didn't think of revenge anymore. What happened at Ellison Tech was over. The fallout had cleared the path for something new, something honest. She whispered to herself, "The truth always finds its way." And as she disappeared into the night, it felt like the world had finally turned in her favor. A month had passed since the chaos at Ellison Tech. For Megan Carter, life had begun to change in quiet but powerful ways. Her new role at Vantage Systems gave her freedom she had never known before. She worked with a small, respectful team that valued her ideas and listened when she spoke. Every morning, she arrived early, coffee in hand, ready to contribute, not out of fear, but from passion. Nathan Brooks often checked in with her. He wasn't the kind of boss who barked orders. Instead, he asked, "How do you think we should approach this?" It was a small question, but for Megan, it meant everything. It meant trust. One morning, she walked into the office and found an envelope on her desk. Inside was a note from Nathan. "You've proven yourself, Megan. I want you to lead the upcoming innovation project. It's yours to shape." She read it twice, disbelief turning into joy. For the first time in her career, she wasn't being used, she was being chosen. That week, Megan threw herself into the project. She stayed late, sketching ideas and refining strategies. Her new team admired her leadership style. She was calm, clear, and inspiring. She made sure everyone's voice was heard, something she had once wished for herself. During a break one evening, she stood by the window overlooking the city. The sun was setting, painting the skyline with gold and pink hues. She thought about her journey, the nights she cried after being humiliated, the moment she walked away, and how everything had changed since. The pain had been real, but it had led her here, to peace. Nathan joined her by the window. "Big day tomorrow," he said, smiling. "You ready for your first presentation as project lead?" Megan smiled back. "I've been ready for this for years." The next day, she stood in front of the boardroom, presenting her vision for the company's next big step. Her voice was confident, steady. She spoke about innovation, integrity, and teamwork, values she had learned the hard way. The room was silent as she finished, and then, applause broke out. Nathan gave her a nod of approval that said everything, she had arrived. Later, as the board members filed out, Nathan approached her. "You were incredible, Megan. The board loved it. You've got something rare, a mix of intelligence and heart." She smiled modestly. "Thank you. It feels good to finally use both." After the meeting, she walked outside. The world seemed brighter. She passed people hurrying through the streets, caught up in their own struggles, and she felt a quiet empathy for them. Everyone carried their own story. Hers just happened to end differently than it began. That evening, Megan met Lisa for dinner. They laughed about old office memories, about the chaos, the coffee spills, and the long nights. Then Lisa leaned forward. "You know, everyone still talks about you at Ellison Tech. They say you took down the biggest deal of the year." Megan chuckled softly. "I didn't take it down. I just told the truth." Lisa smiled. "Well, that truth changed everything." After dinner, Megan walked home under the soft glow of streetlights. She felt lighter. The fear, the anger, the doubt, they had all faded. What remained was strength, calm and steady. She had rebuilt her life from the ashes of her old one. As she entered her apartment, she noticed the resignation letter still pinned to her wall, a quiet reminder of where it all began. She didn't take it down. Instead, she smiled at it. It wasn't a symbol of loss anymore. It was proof that endings could become beginnings. Megan sat by the window with her notebook and began to write new ideas. Her handwriting was steady, her thoughts clear. For the first time, she wasn't writing for approval. She was writing for herself. Outside, the city lights shimmered like a promise. Her story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. 2 years later, Megan Carter stood in front of a crowd at a leadership conference in San Francisco. The large hall was filled with young professionals, entrepreneurs, and managers eager to learn about resilience and integrity in the workplace. Megan, now the head of strategic development at Vantage Systems, adjusted the microphone and smiled. She began softly. "A few years ago, I thought success meant working the hardest and staying the quietest. I thought if I did my best and stayed humble, people would notice. But I learned something different: silence doesn't build respect. Integrity does." The audience listened closely as she spoke about her journey, without naming names, without bitterness. She shared how she walked away from a toxic environment, how truth cost her a job but gave her freedom. Her story wasn't about revenge. It was about finding strength in honesty. After the session ended, people lined up to meet her. Some thanked her for her words, others asked for advice. One young woman nervously said, "I'm in a similar situation. My boss takes credit for my work. I don't know what to do." Megan looked at her gently. "Speak up," she said. "Even if your voice shakes. The right people will hear you. And if they don't, then you're in the wrong place. Don't stay silent for comfort." The young woman nodded with tears in her eyes. Megan gave her a reassuring smile. That was why she told her story, not to look back, but to help others move forward. Later that evening, Megan sat in her office overlooking the city. Her desk was covered with design plans, reports, and a photo of her and her team smiling after their latest project launch. The company had grown stronger than ever, guided by transparency and trust, the very values she once fought for alone. Nathan Brooks knocked on her door and peeked in. "Great talk today," he said. "The team's proud of you." Megan smiled. Thanks, Nathan. I never thought I'd be here, doing this. He chuckled. You earned every bit of it. And you've changed the company in ways no one else could. After he left, Megan turned off the lights and stood by the window. The city lights stretched endlessly into the night, reflecting her thoughts. She remembered the woman she used to be, the one sitting alone with a resignation letter, afraid of what came next. That woman had no idea she'd become a leader who inspired others to stand tall. She opened her old notebook, the same one she had used years ago. On the first page were words she once wrote in frustration, "Someday, they'll know my worth." She smiled and whispered, "They do now." The next morning, she received an email from an old colleague at Ellison Tech. The company was under new management and wanted to partner with Vantage Systems. Megan read the message twice, then leaned back in her chair, thoughtful. Life had come full circle. Instead of anger, she felt compassion. People change. Companies change. Maybe this was her chance to show that doing the right thing always pays off in the end. That afternoon, during a team meeting, she shared the opportunity with her group. It's not about the past, she said. It's about what we build next. Her team nodded, inspired by her calm strength. When the meeting ended, she lingered by the conference room window, watching the skyline. The world outside kept moving, and so did she. Her story had become more than just corporate revenge, it had become a legacy of courage and truth. As the sun dipped behind the tall buildings, painting the sky in gold and rose, Megan smiled. She finally understood what success truly meant. It wasn't about the money, the title, or the recognition. It was about walking through the fire and still choosing to do what's right. And for Megan Carter, that choice had changed everything.